Aloha and welcome to this evening's forum of OHA Trustee candidates. My name is Juanita Mahi'ena'ena Brown Kawamoto, and I am the chair for the Hawaiian Affairs Caucus. My co-host this evening is Melody Aduha. She is our second vice chair of the Hawaiian Affairs Caucus of the Democratic Party of Hawaii. The Hawaiian Affairs Caucus is an entity of the Democratic Party of Hawaii and seeks to address issues of self-determination, protection of Hawaiian cultural practices and sacred sites, pono economic development, and protection of Hawaii's natural resources on the Aina and in the Kai, housing, health, and educational forums, and through educational forums and legislative advocacy.
This evening, we are happy to host this OHA Trustee Candidates Forum in partnership with Olelo's Vote Informed program. The Office of Hawaiian Affairs Election is nonpartisan, and all registered voters in the state of Hawaii can vote for the OHA Trustee positions. While the official date for the state's general election is on November 3rd, 2020, this year, Hawaii votes by mail, and all voters will automatically receive their ballot in the mail. The Office of Elections has announced that ballots will be mailed as early as Monday, October 5th for the city and county of Honolulu, Wednesday, October 7th for the county of Hawaii, Thursday, October 8th for the county of Maui, and Friday, October 9th for the county of Kauai.
Thank you, Melody. This year, we will all be asked to vote for 3 trustees to the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. One at-large trustee, 1 Hawaii resident trustee, and 1 Molokai resident trustee. The trustee for the Kauai resident trustee position was decided in the general election. Our congratulations to the re-election of Dan Ahuna. And with the challenges of COVID-19, we need to elect trustees who understand the mission of OHA, possess the necessary knowledge, skills, and abilities, and are committed to this mission, and understand the needs of our people to see us through their challenging times. We hope that this forum will assist you in making informed choices. Before we begin, Benton Pang and Logistics Manager has a few announcements.
Hello, my name is Benton Kelly Pang. I am Secretary for the Hawaiian Affairs Caucus, the Democratic Party of Hawaii. This forum is being live streamed and will be shared via social media, such as the Olelo Community Media Facebook page, the Olelo Community Media YouTube page, and the Olelo Community Media website. It is also being aired on Olelo Channel 49. The tape of this forum will also be available on the Hawaiian Affairs Caucus website, hawaiianaffairs.org. Questions for the public may be addressed to candidates at their email that we will have posted at the end of this forum. Likewise, volunteers to help candidate campaigns are welcome. Contact the candidates directly at his or her email. For the live stream platforms that have chat rooms, we ask that viewers be respectful of the candidates. Please do not criticize or mock anyone. This is a candidate forum to allow us to get to know the candidates better so that we can make an informed decision when casting our vote. We ask everyone to respect that purpose. This evening's program will consist of 3 segments. The candidate forum, where prepared questions will be asked of the candidates. Extemporaneous questions from Hawaiian Affairs Caucus representatives. And a pauhana, where we will all enjoy music, holi, and mo'olelo by the candidates. We hope that you will find this evening's candidate forum informative and the pauhana program enjoyable.
Mahalo, Benton. We are pleased to welcome to this evening's forum Trustee at Large candidates Keli'i Akina and Keoni Souza, Hawaii Resident Trustee candidates Keola Lindsay and Lanakila Maguial, and Moloka'i Resident Trustee candidates Luana Alapa and Colette Machado. We're now ready to begin our questions of the candidates by our moderators, Kainoa Kaumehiva Rego and Jacob Brian Aki. Eloquent speakers, members of the Hawaiian Affairs Caucus, E Holomua, Kainoa, and Jacob.
Mahalo, Auntie. Aloha, candidates. Thank you for being with us. This evening's program has been structured to provide you with 1 minute each to introduce yourself and why you are running for the position of OHA Trustee, followed by questions to help us know your personal values and your position on issues such as public land trust, governance, Mauna Kea, COVID-19, and other matters of interest to the Native Hawaiian community. For these questions, the moderators will advise you of the time to answer the questions. We'll then wrap up with 90 seconds of closing statements by each of you. We invite Luana Alapa, followed by Trustee Colette Machado, candidates for the Moloka'i resident seat, followed by Trustee Keli'i Akina and Keoni Souza for the Trustee at Large seat, ending with Keola Lindsay and Lanakila for the Hawaii resident candidate. So Luana, you are up first. Oh, I think you're on mute. There we go.
Great. Aloha, everyone. I'm Luana Alapa, a Po'olehua Moloka'i, and I'm running for the Office of Hawaiian Affairs Moloka'i Island Trustee seat. I'm the middle of two sisters, and we were raised on two islands where we spent half of our life in Laie Oahu with our mother, Kawana Kanahele Pukahi, and our stepfather, Leroy Pukahi. The other half of our life was spent on Moloka'i with our dad, Stanley Alapa, and stepmom, Shirley. I'm a proud graduate of the Kamehameha schools, and I continued my education where I received my Bachelor of Arts degree in psychology. I'm a single mother of 4, and I'm a licensed insurance agent, a Toastmaster, a member of the Rotary Club, the E-Club, and a member of the Hawaiian Chamber of Commerce. Mahalo.
Mahalo. Up next is Trustee Colette Machado.
Aloha mai kako. I am Colette Machado, the current trustee for Moloka'i and Lanai. I am humbled to have won the majority of votes during the primary for the islands I represent, which is Moloka'i and Lanai, and I also won Maui. I am a Kupa Aina, born and raised on Moloka'i. I am a lifelong Democrat. I wanted to make that clear on the front end. Like so many other Native Hawaiians, growing up, I experienced having parents who worked the pineapple fields on Molokai and off-season collected welfare. So I know something about hardships and how difficult it's become for our COVID-19 ohana in these times. I am seeking re-election to continue my commitment to uplifting our people, standing up against injustice, and serving my community. Mahalo.
Mahalo, Trustee. Up next, we have the at-large seat. So first will be Trustee Akina.
Aloha mai kako, I'm Keli'i Akina. First, let me say mahalo to the members of the Hawaiian Affairs Caucus of the Democratic Party and to all viewers. Also, aloha and best wishes to my fellow candidates. You know, it is such an honor to be your trustee at large in the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. I'm also a husband and father of 4 children, all of whom, like myself, are graduates of the Kamehameha schools. When I was first elected trustee, I fulfilled my campaign promise to fight fraud, waste, and abuse. I championed an independent audit, and when the state auditor found that many trustees had abused their allowances, I refused to use mine, and I returned all $44,000 to the OHA beneficiaries. I'm committed to making sure that all Hawaiians will get housing, jobs, education, and healthcare. That's why I'm your watchdog in OHA on behalf of all beneficiaries. E hana kako. Let's all work together to build a better life for all Hawaiians and all people of the state of Hawaii. Mahalo for hosting this forum tonight. Aloha.
Thank you, Trustee. Up next is Keoni Souza.
Hello, everyone. Mahalo for tuning in tonight. Mahalo to the Democratic Party and the Hawaiian Caucus members as well for putting on this event and showcasing us as candidates for the voting public. Mahalo. I'm a proud father of 3 keiki, Bentley, 4th grader at Punahou School, my son Royce, a 1st grader at St. Louis School, as well as my beautiful daughter, Presley, who is 1 year old. Married to my beautiful wife, Mahina. We reside out in Kapolei, Oahu. My day job, I'm a realtor with Coldwell Banker, Pacific Properties, as well as a proud member of the Grammy-nominated group Nāhoa, and also Nahoko Hanohano award-winning group. I'm also a board member of the Hawaii Academy of Recording Arts, where I serve 500 plus members and through, taking care of them as well as what I'm trying to do with OHA and being their trustee. OHA has many great qualities, and we need to be doing more to serve our beneficiaries. As OHA trustee, I will be sure to hold OHA accountable in doing so. Mahalo.
Thank you. Now we move over to Mokunui o Keawe with our Hawaii Island trustee candidates. Up first is Keola Lindsay.
Aloha. I'd also like to extend my mahalo to the Hawaiian Affairs Caucus and the Democratic Party of Hawaii for putting on this event tonight, and to all the viewers listening in, and also extend my aloha to my fellow candidates tonight. I'm proud to be from Waimea, Hawaii, born and raised there, but more specifically a product of Pu'ukapu Hawaiian Homestead. I grew up, really surrounded by generational values of honesty, integrity, hard work, taking care of each other, and larger philosophies on life, working through challenges, adapting, and really figuring out a way to get through. I have 2 decades of experience working with communities at the county, state, and federal level. I've considered that a privilege. There have been challenges, but I believe that has prepared me to take this next step, to sit as an OHA trustee and shape policy to help our people become educated, get healthy, and find economic stability. Mahalo.
Mahalo. Last but not least, we have Lana Kila. Oh, Lana Kila, I think you're on mute.
Aloha no kako. First off, mahalo nui to the Democratic Party and Native Hawaiian Affairs Caucus for hosting this wonderful forum. Aloha to all of our fellow candidates here. My name is Joshua Lanakilo Ka'aina i Kapono Manguel, and I hail from Hamakua, Hawaii Island. I was born and raised Mauka of the town of Honoka'a. I live in the area of Ahualoa. I am a proud graduate of the Hawaiian Charter School movement, a graduate of Kano Ka'aina. It was the very first Native charter school. I'm a proud teacher and a kumu. I returned home to my hometown, became an educator, teaching from Papamala'o, from our preschool all the way up to 12th grade, and been deeply part of my local community my whole life. I currently stand as the executive director for the Hawaiian Cultural Center of Hamakua, which I founded back in 2016, and Heki'i Aina. I seek to bring my experience into this office to get this office activated and in alignment with its community to kulia and strive for our highest, for our whole lahui. Mahalo nui kako. Aloha.
Mahalo. Now I will hand it over to my beautiful co-moderator, Kainoa.
Mahalo nui, Brother Jacob, and mahalo to each of you for your wonderful introductions. We'll just dive right into it, shall we? By Hawaii's constitution, OHA is entitled to 20% of the proceeds generated by the Public Land Trust. The state currently appropriates $15.1 million annually to meet this obligations, but studies have shown that this amount should be north of $30 million. Over the years, OHA's efforts to get the legislature to update its prorated share have not been successful. Going into the 2021 legislative session, what are your ideas for getting this issue addressed? And what are your ideas for building the OHA Trust Fund? Each of you will have 90 seconds to reply. Please be sure to respond to both of these questions. We will begin with candidate Akina, to be followed by candidates Souza, Lindsay, Manguel, Alapa, and Machado. Candidate Aquina, your response.
There's no question about it. It's a matter of justice. Hawaiians deserve the full amount of our share of public lands trust. So why hasn't OHA been effective in getting the legislature to comply? It's because OHA's reputation and credibility are at an all-time low. OHA is being investigated by the State Attorney General. In 2018, the state auditor issued a scathing report on our finances. And currently, the legislature is withholding the entire 2019 budget amount of $3 million until OHA gets audited again and reveals what's going on with its LLCs. OHA has also failed to show that it can handle the money it's provided. It has not developed the public land trust resources given in terms of 30 acres of land on Kaka'ako, losing potentially billions of dollars. To restore OHA's credibility, trustees have to become true watchdogs over the trust fund. If reelected, I will continue to pursue a three-part plan to achieve this. First, protect the trust through regular audits and fiscal policy. Secondly, grow the trust by fully developing Kaka'ako Makai and other properties. And third, use the trust properly for housing, jobs, education, and healthcare. I'm committed to restoring OHA's credibility so that it has clout at the legislature. And when we have the clout, the legislature will listen to us. And the legislature will finally have no further excuses to withhold what Hawaiians deserve. Hawaiians deserve the full complement of the revenues from this public lands trust funds, and I'm going to work to that end. Thank you very much. Aloha.
Mahalo nui, Candidate Aquina. Candidate Souza.
You know, it's kind of funny to hear a trustee refer to the organization in third person. You know, all his efforts have been unsuccessful because of the fact that we're still a state-run agency. Everything has to be passed through the legislature. In the past, OHA had to ask for the money, while there currently is a cap forced on by OHA by the legislature. So now we need to change our approach and show the state that we are all adults here and we know how to manage the monies correctly. We also need to show them that we have solid plans for development such as Kaka'ako Makai that was previously pushed out. OHA cannot do this on their own. We need to utilize our partnerships with various industries such as the construction trades and real estate developers, whom I do have the support from, and work together to generate a solid plan to bring before the legislature. We need to show them that our plans will not only support Native Hawaiians, but will also increase tax revenues for the state of Hawaii. Also, instead of investing the trust monies across the sea, we need to bring it back home and invest in our state. Mahalo.
Mahalo nui loa, Candidate Souza. Moving on to Candidate Lindsay.
Mahalo. You know, the pathway that has gotten us here is clear. The Admissions Act, the Constitutional Convention in 1978, everything that, and OHA has produced significant documents that shows exactly what's owed to Native Hawaiians and why. And that exists and it's ready to be presented to whoever wants to see it. I think in the upcoming legislative session, the best thing OHA is going to be able to do is educate new legislators, incoming ones that just get elected, and existing ones that want to know more information, want to know the facts. If they have questions, we can answer it. All that information's there. I also think we can look into direct negotiations with the agencies that are responsible for giving us public land trust revenues, and also explore the possibility of counties providing PLT revenues to Native Hawaiians. As far as growing the OHA Trust Fund, one initiative I'm very excited about and would explore as an OHA trustee is becoming a telecommunications company and providing broadband and internet services to our people. The internet is a 21st century resource. It's valuable. And we know meetings like this wouldn't be happening right now without it. We need to fully explore that. And I believe it'll bring significant revenue to the Native Hawaiian Trust. Mahalo.
Mahalo, Candidate Lindsay. Candidate Manuel, the floor is yours.
Mahalo. I think it is something that we must to that these funds that is allocated for Kamauli that come from the so-called ceded lands. We know it's actually not ceded lands. These are stolen lands. OHA was formed out as a product of seeking justice for our people. And these monies are due to us. We have been gypped for many years. We have never received the proper funding as mandated in the Hawaii State Constitution. So I do believe that we need to hold the state accountable. They like to point out on all the shortcomings of OHA and their dealings with funds. We'll look at the state of Hawaii and their mismanagement when it comes to funds. So I think we have the right to be able, the legal rights to access these funds. In order to, for us, I think the best thing is to be able to build our trust from within. We need to invest in our own local communities, invest in our own local businesses, Hawaiian owned and operated businesses on Hawaiian lands, work with Hawaiian contractors to help to build within our own community. If we want to speak about sovereignty, if we want to speak about self-sustainability, that requires these funds staying home. I think one initial push I really want to see happen that OHA can help take the lead on is helping to push and encourage more alternative health, truly alternative, safe, healthy power sources for Hawaii, and especially to help to support our local communities, especially our small communities within our Hawaiian homelands as well, where we are able to manage that on our own lands.
Mahalo nui, Candidate Manuel. Next up, Candidate Alapa.
There are two beneficiaries of the ceded land trust, the public and Native Hawaiians. OHA should seek a share of land, money, and natural resources for Hawaiians as well as the public. Once the Hawaiian share of the trust is identified and secured, OHA can then develop a trust resource financial plan to build these assets for future revenue. Building a trust fund, OHA should think outside of the box and participate in a meaningful development partner or a financial partner. OHA should look at acquiring private land, commercial, and natural resources. OHA is totally dependent on state allocations and legislative appropriations. Moving forward, I'd like to see OHA grow an entire trust fund so that we can become independent trusts, just like Bishop Estate. Mahalo.
Mahalo nui loa, Candidate Alapa. Last in the lineup, Candidate Machado.
Justice for Hawaiians has been a focal point of OHA at the legislature for the past decade. I agree with what the candidates have said. However, until we can recover from the COVID-19 budget crisis, I would pause, work with legislators on economic recovery, and resume active pursuit of the revenue until the budget crisis is over. Meanwhile, OHA will work with the legislature on phases of economic recovery. I will be working with Speaker Saiki on the COVID-19 Economic and Financial Preparedness Committee. To move OHA into the next level of development, the trustees need to implement a strong land use development policy plan to increase income revenue and pushing aggressively for commercial development on all OHA's commercial properties that includes Lama Kukui and Kaka'ako Thank you.
Mahalo nui loa, Candidate Machado. Brother Jacob.
Thank you. So the next topic is building trust. OHA exists to enhance the well-being of Native Hawaiians. To do this requires trust. 1, trust among all 9 OHA trustees. 2, trust with Native Hawaiians and the community that it serves. And 3, trust with the governor and the Hawaii State Legislature. How would you build trust with all 3 of these key stakeholders? Each candidate will be given 90 seconds to answer this question. We'll begin with the Hawaii Island trustee candidates. First is Lanakila, followed by Keola Lindsay. Second will be trustee Colette Machado, followed by Luana Alapa. And last, we'll go to the at-large candidates with Keone Souza, followed by Keli'i Akina. Lanakila, you're up.
I think really bringing OHA back into their communities is essential. Making sure that there's open dialogue with our beneficiaries. I know for myself, being here on Hawaii Island, communicating with our trustees has always been very difficult. You know, everything seems very far away based on Oahu. And so to be able to speak and get our point and get and share our message and share our hearts has been very, very difficult. So I think it's very important to see our trustees actively in their communities, working and listening regularly, often in their communities, and not just waiting for the own individual or the set OHA meetings, but actually do the work and be out working with your community and seeking and being present in your communities. You know, I think that's very crucial. And as well as what we see, a lot of the mistrust has come up due to a lot of shadowy things of OHA's past. It is time to ho'opono these things. Yes, there's been different attempts at that. The audit was an attempt to that. Bringing all these different things table. Okay, let's stop the hakaka, all this infighting, and let's just solve these problems, because we have the bigger kuleana of working to inspire our people to rise and working with them, assisting them to rise in what each community knows they need best. So I think it's very important that we remember that it is not a top-down. Our kuleana is to lift our huia.
Mahalo. Keola, you're next.
Mahalo. I think each of these three categories, while trust overall is the theme, each one of them has a slightly different approach. Within on the board, in theory, that's the easiest one because there's 9 trustees and it's in-house. But sometimes it has seemed to be the most challenging one. And I think I'll use the metaphor of the canoe, which happens all the time. I've paddled canoe long enough to know a little bit about that. Not saying I'm good at it, but I've paddled in a canoe enough to know everybody has to understand their role and understand their destination and how they're going to get there. And I think the trustees, again, we're all elected, or they're all elected, take the oaths, understand what the mission is. And there's got to be that common understanding of what the goal is and how the trustees are going to get us there. In the community, I do think there's 600,000 Hawaiians, 300,000 live outside of Hawaii. Some of the fundamental challenges of our people and OHA is seeing OHA meet their needs. And I think as OHA develops a new strategic plan, clearly lays that out, and the community starts seeing the results through that plan and start seeing OHA move the needle in health, housing, education, and economic stability, people will see OHA producing results and hold value to the organization. And lastly, with the governor and legislator, I don't think trust is the most important thing. I believe clear communication with our legislature and governor is the key. Clear lines of communication when they need information from us. Mahalo.
Thank you. Moving on to beautiful Molokai. Up first is Trustee Colette Machado.
My point of view is there is no room for trustees that have personal agendas. We must all become united over the mission of the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, because we are the only entity that focuses on our beneficiaries. And that's very important to uplift them in these days and the future of Hawaii. At the board table, we must enable free and full discussion and set high standards for a transparent, accountable, and democratic process. Allowing that type of understanding when you come to the board table is very fundamental in moving forward with a good approach and a positive outcome. My last point is this: if we cannot work with the legislature or the governor and the state of Hawaii agencies, I believe that we are not going to be successful. We must continue to look at building a positive relationship with all of them and to prove that we are deserving of whatever is right for Hawaiians. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next is Luana.
In building trust amongst the 9 trustees, the best and fastest way to build trust is by getting to know each other outside of the work environment. This means getting our families together to better understand our core values by the way we interact with each other, through heart-to-heart conversations. This way we can have each other's backs and start off with a new, clean slate of collaboration and real teamwork. Only then can we get to know our Native Hawaiian communities more intimately, simply by understanding what we as trustees stand for as one board, not as 9 individuals. I would like to see each trustee bring a spirit of cooperation, collaboration, and teamwork into the boardroom, where each of these skills is critical for good governance while being aligned with OHA's goal of ensuring that our Native Hawaiians and beneficiaries' needs are being met. Remember, there is no I in teamwork. Trust will be restored once our Hawaiian beneficiaries witness a cohesive board working together as one in helping to improve the quality of life for them, for all of us. With the governor and the legislature, there is strength in numbers. As a unified board, we can approach the governor and legislature with one steadfast voice, representing one agenda, not 9. Mahalo.
Mahalo nui. Now on to the trustee at-large candidates. We'll start with Keone Souza. Oh, sorry, Keone, you're on mute.
Sorry, mahalo, Jacob. You know, the current board is divided. There can be disagreements, but trust is the most important foundation of running a successful, thriving business. We cannot waste time fighting one another. We need to focus on the well-being of Native Hawaiians. So we need to first start with electing individuals who can be trusted. My opponent, Mr. Akina, is the current president and CEO of Grassroots Institute. This far-right organization constantly attacks the government and other Hawaiian organizations, such as the Kamehameha Schools, where he graduated from, by calling them an evil empire. We cannot build trust by having a trustee that can't be trusted. A direct quote from Mr. Akina in the Garden Alley newspaper, 2017, he says, "Politics is not about the truth." So it's going to be interesting to see how he answers this question. Mahalo.
Mahalo. Up next is Trustee Akina. Akina.
Mahalo. Trust is very important. It has to be earned. When it comes to the people, Native Hawaiians and the general public trusting OHA, the number one thing that OHA has to do is earn that trust by delivering on our promises and making sure that we provide housing, jobs, education, and healthcare. That's why I've got a 3-point plan to see that we do that. Then the people will trust us when we deliver. Secondly, trust is important for us to go to the legislature, but the way that we will earn the trust at the legislature is by showing credibility. In other words, showing that we handle our finances well, showing that we are open to being audited, showing that we are cooperative with the process of the state. Then we'll have the credibility where the legislature will trust us. In the final area that this question asks, in terms of trustees, we generally trust each other. I love my fellow trustees. I work well with them. We all work together. In 95% of all of our legislating together, all of our voting, we're in unanimous agreement. But it's important for us to recognize that we were appointed by the beneficiaries, and our first goal is not to trust each other, but to represent the needs of the beneficiaries. So sometimes we have to have distrust of each other in order to challenge each other to live up to the highest standards. I think that's the important place that trust plays, and we need to earn it through credibility. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. Kainoa?
There are a diverse set of opinions among Native Hawaiians on the path to creating some form of Native Hawaiian self-governance, such as federal recognition or independence. The benefit of Native Hawaiian self-governance is that it would provide Native Hawaiians with greater control over their destiny as they move towards self-determination and self-sufficiency. Besides education on the different forms of governance, what leadership should OHA provide to bring some form of self-governance to fruition? You will have 60 seconds to respond. We'll start with candidate Alapa, to be followed by candidates Machado, Akina, Souza, Lindsay, and Manuel. Candidate Alapa.
The leadership role that OHA can provide to realize some form of Native Hawaiian self-governance is as a facilitator. As the manager of the trust and assets, OHA can facilitate this objective by educating the Hawaiian community about civics and the right to govern ourselves. The structure for governance has been long established. What's missing in our current government are Hawaiians. Realizing this solution, Hawaiians will now have an opportunity to run for every seat in our state legislature, executive branch, and even the governor's office, as well as our county government on all islands. That is the key to restoring our dignity, advancing our people, and making our last queen proud that we can do this. Prince Kuhio knew this was the best path. My sister worked in Hawaii's government for the governor's office to the county level, and she saw with her own eyes how collective ethnic groups would always put their ethnicities priorities first. What about the Hawaiians? Who's taking care of us? Nobody. We must wake up and get mobilized. Mahalo.
Mahalo nui, Candidate Alapa. On to Candidate Machado.
I remain passionate about this. I want to achieve Native Hawaiian self-governance in my next term, but we will need a Biden-Harris administration to help us to formalize a government-to-government relationship with the U.S. federal government. We will need Democratic majority in both the U.S. Senate and the U.S. House of Representatives. OHA's role really needs to be to uplift the efforts of the community organizations doing the groundwork to get this back on track. It is part of the Democratic Party platform, which states, we support the right of Native Hawaiians to self-determination, including the formation of the chosen governmental entity. Thank you.
Mahalo nui, Candidate Machado. Moving on to Candidate Akina.
Self-governance is absolutely important to the Lahui. However, we are a diverse people. Some Hawaiians believe that we should have nothing to do with the United States of America. Other Hawaiians are very proud to be both Hawaiian and American. The point of OHA is not to take a stand to divide Hawaiians between one view and the other, but to allow Hawaiians who have both of these views and a multitude within to be able to thrive. First of all, to provide a platform so we can communicate and educate. Secondly, to ensure that whatever view we have of self-governance, that we are all receiving economic sovereignty. And that's why OHA needs to be committed to its mission of providing the things Hawaiians need to advance their conditions economically in terms of housing and in terms of jobs and education and healthcare. And when we have that platform of economic sovereignty, then we have the freedom to discuss the different options. And I think OHA needs to play a neutral role between Hawaiians, bringing stakeholders together and educating. Mahalo.
Mahalo, Candidate Akina. Candidate Souza, the floor is yours.
You know, Hawaiian self-determination takes many shapes and forms. Individuals and groups within the Hawaiian community each have their own perspective on what self-determination looks like and how to achieve this goal. The Hawaiian people have every right to seek self-determination in their own ways. OHA was created in some sense to be a means of self-determination. If the agency maximized its full potential, Hawaiians would find solace in OHA as a respectable ally for Hawaiians and Hawaiian issues. OHA should continue to facilitate our journey towards self-governance. Mahalo.
Mahalo nui, Candidate Souza. Moving on to Candidate Lindsay.
Mahalo. You know, when OHA was created, there was a vision that at some point, I think, in 1978, folks thought that point was a lot closer than it has turned out to be, that there would be a self-governing entity and OHA would then, transition into that entity. So as we're waiting for that entity to come, the most important thing OHA can do right now is manage our assets responsibly, continue building the trust so that when the entity comes online, there's solid resources for the entity to serve its people, and keep working towards addressing the needs of our people in health, housing, education, and economic stability. The biggest role we can play is convening dialogue amongst the diverse views of groups and individuals out there on this important issue. We can educate on processes, but our most important role will be bringing people together for that healthy and respectful dialogue to happen. Mahalo.
Mahalo nui, Candidate Lindsay. And closing out this particular question will be Candidate Manguel.
Hawaiian self-determination needs to be exactly that, self-determination. I think one thing that we have to remember is there is a distrust when this conversation comes up with the Office of Hawaiian Affairs as well, because the Office of Hawaiian Affairs is seen as a state entity. The state, which represents the state of Hawaii, which is part of that, which again is part of the illegal overthrow of our nation. We cannot forget that OHA was created again as an initiative to regain the justice of our nation. We have every right, but I stand very firmly to this lies in the collaboration and the unity of the people. Again, it is not something I feel that OHA needs to orchestrate and put together, but needs to support the community in their as they bring this together. It is very, very imperative that OHA continue to support the Lahui, that we but do not get in the way and try to lead that effort. It needs to come from the people. That is sovereignty.
Mahalo nui loa, Candidate Manuel, for your thoughtful response. I turn it back over to Jacob for our next question.
Thank you. Among the Native Hawaiian community, there are diverse views regarding the building of the 30-meter telescope on Mauna Kea. Some favor building it, others oppose it. Do you see any resolution to this issue? If so, how do you see OHA's role? And you have 1 minute to respond. We'll start with Keone Souza, followed by Trustee Akina, then on to Lanakila, followed by Keola Lindsay, and then Trustee Machado, and last will be Luana. Keone, the floor is yours.
Mahalo, Jacob. I'm going to answer this question as a beneficiary and not as a candidate. And it's going to be real simple. OHA needs to take a clear stance on this issue of the 30-meter telescope and Mauna Kea. Once OHA takes a stance and sets the example, the Native Hawaiian community will fall in line and come together to see common ground and move forward in solidarity. Mahalo.
Mahalo. Trustee Akina?
My heart really breaks in this issue when I see Native Hawaiians divided against each other. There are Kanaka Maoli on both sides of the question of TMT, and we are the same in our core. The role that OHA has to play first and foremost is to bring us together so that we hear each other, so that we talk with each other, and where necessary, we ho'oponopono, and that we start to work together in common ground. One of the areas where I'm very proud of the work of OHA has been in advancing the defense of the environment of Mauna Kea. I think what we have to do is stand for pono management and pono stewardship. We have to make sure that Hawaiians have a voice in the management. We have to make sure that if telescopes are decommissioned and obsolete, that they're removed and cleaned up completely. And I think that if we all work together on the pono stewardship, it creates the common ground in which to raise the question of what can the different uses of Mauna Kea be that bring glory to the Hawaiian people and honor Mauna Kea.
Mahalo, Trustee Lanakila.
I think my stance on this is very clear. I feel it is OHA is in the proper position at this time in challenging the overall management of Mauna, because I think all the proof of why another large construction project should not be happening on that mountain lies in looking back at the proper stewardship and care of this wahipana, this very sacred place, this gem of a fragile ecosystem. I think the wedge that is commonly being described between the Kanaka Maoli, I think that we remember that wedge is a foreigner's wedge. It's something from outside that has come and implemented itself, and only becomes a wedge because our people are left in such financial and economic stripes constantly that we are felt that we have to take whatever types of things and sacrifice who we are and our connection to Aina in order to survive. I think it's crucial that we move that wedge by supporting our people and not by sacrificing more of who we are as a people.
Thank you. Keola?
Mahalo. If OHA was in a decision-making position on this issue, of course the agency would have to sound in one way or the other. When we look to the opposite side of our archipelago, the northwestern Hawaiian Islands, Papahanaumokuakea, we have that role. We're a decision maker there. The Native Hawaiian voice is meaningfully represented in that management structure, and there are clear policies towards decision making that integrate Native Hawaiian values into that. For Mauna Kea right now, the best role for OHA is to convene dialogue, bring the stakeholders together, try to find a way forward. Because the instant we take a position one way or the other, we're going to completely alienate the other side. And we don't have any meaningful role in it other than any meaningful role in facilitating the resolution and conclusion at that point. we need to be facilitators and conveners at this point. Mahalo.
Mahalo. Now to the Molokai Island candidate, Trustee Machado.
The way that it is now, given the years of mismanagement, I just can't support the TMT being built. There is no room on the Mauna. That being said, I hear the concerns and jobs and educational opportunities. OHA has a role to play in making sure that all of the voices in our community, both those who are opposed and in support, are heard, and that whatever is done on the Mauna is pono. So we have to look at a reasonable model on how we look at the co-management of this valuable resource. I've represented the Kaho'olawe Island Reserve Commission. It is a state board and commission where DLNR, Maui County, and OHA co-manage with the Protect Kaho'olawe Ohana and Native Hawaiian organizations to manage the island of Kaho'olawe. If we look at Kaho'olawe Island Reserve Commission as a model, a joint management for Mauna Kea could consist of DLNR, Hawaii County, University of Hawaii, OHA, and the Kiai. I believe that is the only opportunity that we can start facilitating to get the kind of state acknowledgement that Native Hawaiian issues are concerned. Mahalo.
Thank you. Luana, last but not least.
You know, it would be difficult to resolve Mauna Kea issues as long as Hawaiian rights, worship, gatherings, so forth are being ignored. There are already 13 telescopes and 22 buildings on the Mauna and still no place for Hawaiians to engage in ceremony and prayer. We've built enough structures on the Mauna. OHA should be able to support the Kia'i as well. After all, they are protecting our sacred area, the mountain. Until the state can manage the Mauna properly and show they can clean up their kuleana, OHA's role should be working with its beneficiary practitioners to create a workable solution that includes everyone, not just the state parties and commercial licensees. OHA should have an active role in stewardship to ensure cultural rights are being recognized and protected, and as well, of course, supporting the Kia'i. Mahalo.
Mahalo. Kainoa, back to you.
Mahalo nui, Jacob. And mahalo nui, the thoughtful replies to each of these questions have been incredibly educational and meaningful. I'd like to take this time to pivot towards OHA's responsiveness to the Native Hawaiian community during this COVID-19 pandemic. As of April, Hawaii's unemployment rate was 22%. For many Native Hawaiians, it has meant struggling to make ends meet, like food, paying for rent, utilities, their education, and medical bills. It will take some time to recover from the effects of COVID-19 for sure. How do you view OHA's role to address these continuing needs? You will have 1 minute each to answer this question. First, we'll start with the Hawaii residency trustees, starting with candidate Lindsay and candidate Manguel, to be followed by the Molokai residency trustees, candidate Alapa and Machado, and to close with the at-large trustees, trustee candidates, candidate Akina and Souza. Candidate Lindsay, please begin.
Mahalo. So early on in the COVID pandemic, the OHA administration went through a process of identifying funding that could become available for the COVID response. And that was presented to our trustees. And that was the initial wave of OHA direct funding relief that went out into our communities. A balance has to be found because there's existing grants and programs that need to be served. And you can't take all the funding away from those for COVID, as important as COVID is at this time. I think there'll be more of that as we move into the future and additional budgets are reviewed by OHA. I think there is an unprecedented amount of federal money coming into Hawaii in response to COVID. OHA can have a role in assuring that the Native Hawaiian community is aware of those opportunities and accessing those relief funds to address the issues that have popped up. And we should have a role in the overall recovery of the economy moving forward. Mahalo.
Mahalo nui, candidate Lindsay. Candidate Manguel.
I think OHA, I very much support everything that Keola just stated. Exactly that. OHA, I've been noticing, is doing a good job at helping to try and keep the Hawaiian community abreast as to what is being made available in real time. Although I feel OHA can also continue to be more active and helping to lead a call to demand that these funds get distributed well. We know that there is, again, a lot of mismanagement and a lockup of a lot of these federal funds that are meant to help our community being tied up to the state. And I think we could help to be a voice to make sure that when these funds come in, they get out to the communities, including especially for Kanaka Maoli. As far for the long term in helping with recovery, I think something that OHA has a unique opportunity with supporting the Kanaka Maoli, the native people, and helping us to secure our essential needs, because that's one of the most scariest things that took place in this situation is showing how unsustainable we are. And I think if OHA is able to pivot and focus our funds to help support local businesses,
can you wrap up,
essential
please?
needs, it'll be beneficial.
Mahalo nui, mahalo nui. Candidate Alapa, your response.
OHA should be funding and supporting grassroots Hawaiian nonprofit efforts to feed the hungry, like what we've had with Malama Meals. OHA should not be funding public nonprofits, but rather funding island Hawaiian nonprofit partners who work in the Hawaiian community. OHA must ensure it funds needs of its Hawaiian beneficiaries instead of funding groups that address public needs. OHA should also use its financial influence with local banks and credit unions that have some forbearance and work with our Hawaiians to help them get through the difficult period, especially them perhaps losing their homes and their financial credit is affected due to their loss of jobs and so forth and loss of income. OHA should be the voice to the financial institutions for the Native people. And they've done a great job in creating programs to help our beneficiaries, especially with meeting their mortgage obligations. And I think this should continue. Mahalo.
Mahalo nui, Candidate Alapa. Candidate Machado.
In May, the Office of Hawaiian Affairs allocated $3.82 million from our reserve funds for emergency relief for housing, utilities, debt, kupuna meals, and farm-to-market nonprofits providing food security in communities. 30-plus nonprofits are to receive $721,739 in funding for food security. You can't get any better given our limitation and what we have to offer in our fiscal reserve. All I can say is OHA was there for its beneficiary from when it happened. And I want to thank the trustees for agreeing with the relief fund of $3.82 million. Mahalo.
Mahalo nui loa, Candidate Machado. Moving on to Candidate Akina.
Mahalo. I'm so glad that Chair Trustee of the Trustees, Colette Machado, mentioned the work that we have done together. I'm proud to have sat on that board and that we were unanimous in awarding $3.8 million in emergency funds. That's the first strategy that is needed, emergency funding. But in addition to that, OHA needs to go beyond that into economic empowerment of Hawaiians so that they have the jobs and the economic opportunities that are needed. With the demise of the tourism industry, we've also hurt Hawaiian businesses. But we have to restart tourism in a way that is sustainable and that is consistent with our values. And we have to help Hawaiians to find diversified job opportunities that are not dependent upon the loss of tourism. I think OHA can do both of these things, provide emergency needs, as well as work on the long-term economic empowerment of Kanaka Maoli. It's important to have a full approach with both of these directions.
Mahalo nui loa, Candidate Akina. Kalamai mai, a little parched. Moving on to Candidate Souza.
Okay, Noah. OHA has done a great job thus far by providing assistance through their emergency financial assistance program, free meals programs, loan opportunities, support for subsistence living, etc. OHA should definitely continue partnering with these various agencies, such as the Hawaii Community Foundation and the Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement, to provide further relief for Native Hawaiian families in the years to come. Mahalo.
Mahalo nui loa, Candidate Souza. Turning it back over to Jacob.
Mahalo. As this COVID-19 pandemic has shown, there is a heavy reliance on the internet for healthcare, education, applying for jobs, meetings, candidate forums. But how important is it that OHA assure broadband access in Native Hawaiian communities? We'll start with Hawaii Island trustee candidates. We'll go with Keola first, followed by Lanakila. Then we'll move on to Molokai with trustee Machado, followed by Luana Alapa, and then to the at-large candidates with trustee Keli'i Akina, and followed by Keone Souza. Keola, floor is yours.
Mahalo, Jacob. I mean, internet and broadband access is very important right now. Always has been. It's probably an understatement to say it's probably much more than that, because it's how we stay connected and do many of the activities that we've taken for granted before COVID. I mentioned earlier that I believe OHA should pursue economic development opportunities as an internet provider. But to answer the question, OHA's role in ensuring that Native Hawaiian communities have access is developing partnerships with existing telecommunications providers to know what programs and opportunities they have for communities, especially ones without connectivity, sharing that out, and working with other entities, including the federal government, as federal grant money comes in for telehealth and other initiatives, other tele-initiatives, to again, make sure our community knows about those opportunities, and direct service providers like in telehealth know about them as well. Mahalo.
Mahalo nui. Lanakila.
As one who suffers the most with internet problems at this time, I truly understand the need for this. It is essential at this time. It's become an essential in this day and age. However, we know there's a double-edged sword of bringing of our children, our communities being too reliant on these systems too. However, I think a very important thing that we need to be conscious of too is not to allow monopolies. And in certain arenas such as Hawaiian homes, there are situations that they are facing with not having access to more choices of broadband or internet services in their area. And this is very important, I think. That OHA, I think Keola's initiative idea is a great idea. That yes, if OHA can help to spearhead and provide and create our own local internet provider, it'd be a wonderful thing to help our lahui as well as economic stimulus.
Thank you. Moving on to Molokai with trustee Colette Machado.
Broadband access is critical for telehealth access and for distance learning for our keiki through OPIO and university students. I want to call upon the governor to use the CARES funding to provide broadband access to our communities, especially on rural Oahu and neighbor islands such as Molokai, so we are not left behind. Thank you.
Thank you. Luana?
Broadband access is important to connect and link Hawaiians to the broader community and the world. Today, it's also needed so that our children can attend school during the COVID crisis, as well as our college students. My two children had to stay home from attending college, and luckily they were able to have access to that. However, OHA should also use its influence to get the internet and tech servers and companies to expand their services to all rural and poor Hawaiian communities. OHA should not be paying for this, obviously. OHA is not in the communications industry. But OHA can't also save everyone, as there are other companies that specialize in this area that can do a better job. OHA trustees can do is help facilitate and help these companies execute to provide internet and broadband services to these areas. OHA could set up a task force and identify how they can expedite financially to get experts to help us, like Hawaiian Tel, Spectrum, and even our federal government. OHA can collaborate with the private sector people who are better in this area. And OHA can also bring financial assistance, but let the professionals deal with this plan. As trustees, OHA should be able to facilitate.
Luana, sorry, time. Sorry about that. Mahalo nui. And to the at-large trustee candidates, we'll start with trustee Akina.
This is a great question because it is a forward-moving question facing the future of the Hawaiian people. We need to be on the cutting edge of technology for our keiki so that they can succeed. I'll say two things about this. First, we've got to provide broadband access to existing communities, especially the homesteads. In addition to that, it has to go beyond and be available in the rural areas and to our own kanaka maoli on the mainland. So it has to be portable as well. We've got to be able to make that happen. But secondly, we have to ensure that technology goes forward for the Hawaiian people, not simply with us being consumers and those who buy them, because we'll be victims of scams like the Sandwich Isles. Instead, we have to be producers of this technology and owners of this technology. That goes back to my original plan that we have to have an OHA developing our resources so that we are protecting them, growing them, and then using them in order to give economic empowerment to individuals and to businesses in the Hawaiian community. But I think this is a great question. We need to be forward moving.
Thank you, Trustee. And last, we have Keone Souza.
Mahalo. I agree with Keola, and we definitely need to pair up and we need to team up and collaborate with current service providers who know what they're doing. We need to assure that we have affordable, internet broadband services. There is internet broadband services currently in the homestead, and it is Sandwich Isle Communications, I know firsthand. However, they are not affordable. And there is no option right now currently to go with another service provider. So we need to assure that OHA does support their beneficiaries and move in that route. Mahalo.
Mahalo, guys. Very important topic and great responses. Pass it back over to Kainoa.
Mahalo nui loa, Jacob. I'd like to pivot towards a question related to homelessness. Native Hawaiians are among the largest population of those who are homeless. The state has been grappling with this issue for some time. If elected as trustee, what kinds of programs and services would you advocate for to help Native Hawaiians who are homeless? Also, in what ways can OHA help to assure that Native Hawaiians have access to affordable housing? You will each have 60 seconds to respond. We'll begin with candidate Alapa, to be followed by candidates Machado, Souza, Akina, Manguel, and Lindsay. Candidate Alapa.
OHA should get directly involved in the creation and building of affordable homes for our Hawaiians and our homeless Hawaiians. OHA should cross-reference our Hawaiian veterans list with the DHHL. And these are people waiting on the list to find that all of our Hawaiian vets who qualify for VA loans are definitely important, that we must seek them out so that they too can live a quality of life in a home. Once this is done, OHA should work with the federal VA to identify the federal lands in Hawaii for Hawaiian VA housing and co-develop these areas for our Hawaiian veterans. We cannot forget them. OHA should also create an MOU with the DHHL to ensure the two agencies work together to address the need for affordable housing for our Hawaiian beneficiaries. DHHL has the land and funding. OHA has the funding and authority and ability to access the two agencies in order to make one plan and implement that. OHA also can work with, I think they're also currently working with Habitat for Humanity and helping to build homes. Problem here is Native Hawaiians fall short on financial resources for the planning and permitting and licensing.
Kalamai, candidate Alapa time. Kalamai. Moving on to candidate Machado.
On Molokai, we don't see the homeless, but when I come to Oahu, to our OHA office in Iwalei, I am stunned. As chair of OHA, I have called for a moratorium of the enforcement of sweeps of the homeless population during the COVID-19 pandemic. OHA supports community organizations seeking to provide home ownerships. OHA has subsidized transitional shelters. OHA has provided funding to families in need to build affordable homes and become first-time homeowners. The difficulty is this is a programmatic approach. What we are talking about and a majority of the candidates are addressing is OHA is not involved with any brick and mortar project. Although we've been providing the Department of Hawaiian Homes with $3 million annually to provide that kind of long-term planning to engage with the distribution of home ownership for their waitlisted people. Thank you.
Mahalo nui, candidate Machado. Moving on to candidate Souza.
It's simple. We need to get Hawaiians on their land. There's land that we can teach them how to farm, how to fish, how to build their own homes, self-help homes, something that worked out here in Kapolei. The community came together and built each other's homes, and they learned the trade at the same time. We need to collaborate more with DHHL as well. $3 million for 30 years, great amount of money, but it's still not enough. We need to be putting more Hawaiians on Hawaiian homeland. So, yeah, that's what we need to be doing. Mahalo.
Mahalo nui loa, candidate Souza. Moving on to candidate Akina.
You know, my heart breaks when I think of the 27,000 plus Native Hawaiians who are on the Hawaiian Homeland's waiting list and the thousands who have died just waiting to get home. What we have to do is understand that OHA has the power to fix the business model that is really the problem here. The Hawaiian Homelands have been land rich, but cash poor. OHA has the capacity to be cash rich if it will take its development of properties seriously. And that will provide the capital needed in order to empower housing on Native Hawaiian homelands and also other projects for Native Hawaiians. I think we have to be serious about developing our properties at Makai and in Iwilei. And we have to go after raising billions of dollars of capital over the next 2 decades in order to meet the needs of Native Hawaiians, both as individuals and corporately on the Hawaiian homelands. Under good leadership, OHA will be able to do this. I'm very positive about the future direction of that. Thank you.
Mahalo nui, candidate Akina. Moving on to Hawaii Island, candidate Manuel.
When it comes to housing, I think sometimes we're missing the source of the problem. Many of our people are being priced out of our homelands because there is this foreign system here that is controlling the monetary wealth or pricing of our lands and our homes, and this overtaxations that continue to squeeze Kanaka off their homelands. Hawaiian homes, it is very, we have seen the neglect in that process, but again, too, that is relocating people away from their ancestral homelands. The Hawaiian homes was not their ancestral homes. What is the source that is pushing our people off? But I think it's critical that we really analyze a lot of the reasons as to what families who have lost their lands be able to look and diversify our approach as to how are people losing our lands, how are they, what's keeping them from being able to achieve a stable living, a stable life in our homes. And that's the old,
Hello,
I
my
think it's an
candidate.
essential thing that we need to target.
Time. So sorry. Moving on to candidate Lindsay.
Mahalo. I think as far as, folks that are in the terrible situation of being homeless, it's my understanding that, an individual on Hawaii Island versus a community of folks in Kaka'ako each have a different set of circumstances that have driven them that way. OHA needs to work with direct service providers and subject matter experts to figure out what our role should be to support them in that kind of work. As far as DHHL goes, I'm a beneficiary of DHHL, grateful for it. The wait list should absolutely be zero. OHA has stepped up to help, but the state of Hawaii and federal government also have to step up and work with DHHL beneficiaries and waitlisters to resolve that. And, on Hawaii Island, the median price of a home is $400,000. Affordable is probably in the 200,000 range. We need to start educating kids as early as possible financially so they know what to do to own a home. Mahalo.
Mahalo, everyone. That was a whirlwind of a first round, and we're actually on time. So everybody give yourself a the next segment of this evening's program, it will be extemporaneous questions. So we'll be calling upon 3 members of the Hawaiian Affairs Caucus who is listening to your responses, and we'll ask these extemporaneous questions of 1 or more of you. The 3 members are Rebecca Soon, former Governor John Waihe'e, and Ken Farm. Rebecca will manage this segment. She'll begin by posing the first question. Then we'll call on the next person, for example, Governor Waihe'e or Ken. Candidates must be told how much time they have to answer the question. For example, 30 seconds or 1 minute. When the 15 minutes conclude, Rebecca will return the program back to Kainoa. So handing it over to my friend Becky soon.
Aloha mahalo ka'omaka. Mahalo everyone that's joining us online this evening, and good evening candidates. Thank you for being with us and for sharing your mana'o to many of these questions. As Jacob mentioned, my name is Rebecca Justine Iolani Soon. I'm a member of the Hawaiian Affairs Caucus of the Democratic Party of Hawaii. So for about 15 minutes, myself, Ken Farm, and Governor Waihe'e will be asking some follow-up questions or perhaps some extemporaneous questions, things that maybe we didn't have an opportunity to touch on in some of the prepared questions. So I'm gonna actually, to warm us up, go first to all four of our island candidates. You know, obviously there's a unique kuleana that you all hold if elected to the seat that you're running for, both to represent the Pai'aina as well as the Lahui, but also to represent the interests of the islands and the beneficiaries on your island. And so I just wanted to ask, and maybe I'll start with Chair Machado, and then go to the other three candidates, candidate Alapa and our two Hawaii Island candidates, to answer this question. But if you could please share, what do you think is the most pressing question, the most pressing issue facing your island, and what do you plan to do about it if either elected or if given the opportunity to continue to serve? And if maybe we could do 1 minute for these ones since we're warming up. Chair Machado, when you're ready.
You know, when we were growing up here, unemployment was like acknowledged at 22 plus or more %. And I'm hearing that the COVID-19 brought on statewide 22%. For us, it's common that unemployment is high because there is no real economic hub that can provide for the kind of employment that we have. Tourism isn't even a mention on this island. We don't have accommodations like a hotel or a full hotel. We have a small hotel that is called Hotel Molokai that can accommodate up to 11, 12 rooms. That's about it. So tourism doesn't play a real role here. So that's a concern about the long-term impact. And the fact that unemployment is still high, our people still depend on what they call the SNAP program, which is the food stamps program, and assistance from the Department of Welfare. So pretty much we're still in an economic questionable area, but we all have subsistence practices. We rely on inshore resources, and we rely on being ohana, and we work together to resolve our own individual needs.
Mahalo nui. And candidate Alapa.
Hi, aloha. I totally agree with Trustee Machado. It is very difficult as far as jobs for people there. They're all struggling. They're a little bit anymore. We've had to become dependent. Food being brought in, not only that, products and so forth, but still it's about being able to afford the products as well. One of the things I would like to see, of course, in stimulating jobs, it's one of the most difficult things is how are we going to do this so that our people will be able to earn the income. A lot of them I find out are doing their own entrepreneurial, going online. They're part of multi-level marketing businesses, and some are doing very, very well. I end up buying a product from them too, just to support them. But it's another way we have to be very creative in the way in which we're able to raise monies for ourselves outside of your traditional providing food for yourself because of the hunting that we have, abundant hunting of deer and so forth, fish and so forth. But it's really going to come down to being creative and earn money.
Mahalo nui. Aloha, let's go to Hawaii Island. How about Kiola Lindsay?
Yeah, mahalo. I would echo the Molokai candidates. I think on Hawaii Island, the future, of the next generation is definitely what I think one of the biggest issues going to be. You know, as a father of 5, that's something I think about all the time, right? Like, how are my kids going to be able to eventually support for their families and stay on the island and be with their family and not have to move away? Obviously, the COVID pandemic has certainly impacted a lot of the industries that developed over the last couple of decades, tourism being one of them, have certainly impacted those type of industries. Construction has continued to drive the economy here. But I think the biggest thing that I think OHA can do moving forward is allow people the space and the support to develop economic planning for communities to decide what they want to do moving forward into the future. Mahalo.
Kalamaya was on mute. Mahalo nui kia ora. And candidate Lana Kila Mangwa.
You know, I echo that, you know, for myself, being an educator and teaching and living here my whole life, never leaving this island and being able to observe and teaching such a wide range of students for so many years. I've watched them from kindergarten and develop into adults themselves. And each generation we are facing that squeeze that I mentioned earlier. I think one of the biggest problems we're seeing in Hawaii, on Hawaii Island, is inflation greatly led on by gentrification. We are, in my own hometown right here, Honoka'a, you know, the prices of living has quadrupled, yet the pay wages are not growing. So I really am fearful for the ability for the younger generation, my generation, to be able to afford to live here. So I think what's essential that we need to do is also help to support. The other thing that we're lacking is the infrastructures to support more local entrepreneurship. So I think in that, helping to develop that and helping to keep a cap down on the over embellishment of the pricing of our island home.
Mahalo. Okay, Governor Waihe'e, do you want to start us off to a question to one or more than one of any of our candidates, either a follow-up question or a question that we didn't have the opportunity to get to tonight?
Well, well, first of all, I want to say how impressed I am by the forum and by the questions that were asked tonight and by the people answering. I mean, this has been pretty comprehensive. In many respects, one of the most comprehensive that I've been on. So sitting here thinking of an extemporaneous question is not that easy, since most of the subjects have been covered. So I thought that maybe I would just go off in a little left field kind of question. And see, and this is
How
really
we like it, Gov.
for anybody if you want to get into it, and you know, have a maximum of 1 minute to answer it. You don't have to take the whole minute, but if you wanted to, you could. You know, next to each of your own elections, probably the most important election for Native Hawaiians is going to happen on November 3rd with the election of the President of the United States. And as an example of why that is important, it's important because for 20 years, after we passed the Constitution that established OHA, and after OHA got organized, for 20 years, all of the federal courts upheld the Hawaiian-only election. And when the courts changed as a result of presidential appointments, as we all know, in 2000, the Hawaiian-only election was set aside. So that has a tremendous amount of influence on what happens to Native Hawaiians. And it's not all negative. I mean, when we were protesting Kaho'olawe, the President Bush, with a stroke of the pen, ended the bombing. So this is the influence of that election on all of our plans is important. So I was just going to ask everybody, you know, in a minute or less, who do they feel would be better for Native Hawaiians in terms of the upcoming election for the President of the United States? And more importantly, why? Why do you think one or the other, or maybe neither for that matter? It's really up to you. But so that's the question. The question is, who in the presidential election would be better as president for Native Hawaiians and why? And we can start with, I'll start with Colette since she was the most, we'll start with Molokai since she was the most political of some of her answers. Go ahead.
Well, I acknowledge that we need a Democratic in control of not only in Congress, but also in the White House. We've been struggling for so long to get our fair share of recognition federally. And when the Republicans came into play, we had to kind of go under the radar screen. And we can't keep doing that. Our people deserve more than that, putting it under the radar screen. Even while Obama was president, he provided a leverage for us to be related to the Department of Interior. So we do have a form of federal recognition under the Interior, but we haven't been able to bring it to life. And that's why we need to bring that back to life and work very hard in getting a Democratic president in place. And this is part of the platform of this party too in Hawaii. I was impressed when I looked at the party platform book, and it had it very clearly. So
Thank you. I know,
yeah,
Colette.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
So great to the Democratic Party for supporting
Thank you.
our work ahead of us.
Yeah, and again, just to be clear about the question, we're not asking who you would vote for. It's who would be, in your opinion, better. And thank you, Colette. I guess, Luana, you're next, if you have anything.
No, nothing going to be safe. Actually, no, really, it's going to come down to the people. It's all about their choice. And we live in a democratic world, thank God. We live in this wonderful country. But it's all about everyone choosing for themselves. And whoever is victorious on that day, by all means, we abide by that. It is by the people's choice. So I'm gonna leave it at that, because we're gonna follow whoever the next president is, whether he's Democratic or Republican. It's all about us being our rightful citizens and doing what is best in our lives, but at the same time following a leader that will take us into the 2021. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe we'll go to Keola next.
Mahalo, Governor. You know, when I watch the TV news at night, sometimes I get scared because I see how divided America has become and how just it seems on every little issue there's a fight and it's ugly. My hope is that whomever wins can bring a sense of civility back to America, a sense of bipartisanship on whatever issue, including, Native Hawaiian issues, so that it's not a Democratic or a Republican issue. It's an issue of justice and what's right, and that people actually listen to that. I mean, obviously, if we could guess who would be better than the other, but people can change. We can always hope. But that's my hope, is that whoever wins and leads America for the next 4 years brings civility and, just justice and, peace back to America. Thank you.
Thank you. Lanakila, are you available to do this question or?
Yeah.
It's not impossible to say.
Very scary.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I find this.
It has been quite scary sometimes watching. I agree. Watching what's happening. And myself, I have a lot of friends around the world, and they're all chiming in and observing what's happening. And for myself, that's when sometimes my biggest thing is: are we makaukau for whoever is voted in? It's really about our own home. Are we ready? Are we willing to work together to be sure that our community is pa'a? With whoever gets voted in over there, most times they're announcing the winner before our votes are even counted anyway. So at that note, are we prepared to malam ourselves? We want to talk about self-sufficiency and sustainability, well, it also comes in this way. Are we able to hold ourselves and care for our communities, regardless of what happens beyond? But for the strongest thing for me is, and I think it is quite clear as to the Democratic platform that stands in the protection of our natural resources and the protection of this planet's health.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Kelly, I guess next.
Aloha, Governor. What an honor to have you here tonight, and what a
Thank
great
you.
question. You know, whoever gets elected, presidents come and go. It will not be the salvation of the Hawaiian people, and it will not be the destruction of the Hawaiian people. There are advantages and disadvantages. If we have a Democratic president, we'll have support of the Democratic platform for self-determinism. But at the same time, if we have a Republican president, those who don't want federal recognition may feel a little bit safer. We as Hawaiians are a very diverse people politically. I think the important thing is to recognize whoever is elected, we have to work here on the local level to really build the case for developing self-determinism in a way that is as inclusive as possible. Now, to go back to what you mentioned earlier, OHA is a state government agency, and it has a role that is limited. It's outside of OHA in organizations like Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement or Na'iau Puni, that we have Hawaiians organizing, and OHA can play a role of empowering them and dealing with our mission first, but letting them lead the way.
Thank you, Trustee. Appreciate your answer. I guess Keone, you're.
Hello, Governor.
Hello.
Great question. I think you got us all stumped here, but I'm going to answer this. You know, I agree with Keola. We are divided. First of all, we're divided within OHA organization. We're divided with our government leaders on a state level and also national level. We need to support whoever is going to support us as Native Hawaiians. We need to follow through on what we need to do, and that is very, very important. But it's going to come back to our state, our state, our own state government. We need to make sure whoever our president is, it trickles down. Hawaii is a democratic state, and you know, I'm a registered member of the Democratic Party, and I definitely support Democratic presidential candidate. Mahalo.
Thank you all very much for your answers. I thought, you know, I don't know where else to go, but I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to the next segment after Ken. So Ken, it's your shot. I think you're muted. Yeah.
Mahalo, Governor.
Yeah,
Ken, we can hear you.
Okay, so I have two questions for two different candidates. The first one is just for Lanakila. It's because your competitor voices support for broadband access. What are your thoughts on providing broadband access and the necessary construction that is needed? Right now, there's pushback for development. What would you do to support these endeavors to address any community concerns toward coverage and capacity that would be required in order for there to be this equitable coverage of a broadband across the state?
And Lanakila, if you could do sorry, we could do 30 seconds. Kalamai, not to cut you off, but if we can do 30 seconds on these questions. Mahalo.
I definitely feel that that's going to be crucial to each unique situation and each unique community. It has to be addressed. I think every development of any type needs to go through the proper procedures, the proper testing to be sure that it's not detrimental in the end. Because I think it's just in some cases too, like in my community, I know we chose to live far from the grid for a type of reason, and sometimes to bring these things into our areas might be detrimental. So I think we have to be open and ready to do it properly nonetheless.
Okay. And the next question, this is for Keola Lindsay. You mentioned about the basis of the county tax revenue for part of the money that would be part of the PLT, if you will. Could you elaborate on that? Reason being is because for the county, the land tax is their basis for revenue. So how would you go about getting the counties to part with, you know, one of their largest funding mechanisms?
Yeah, I guess what I was saying is that we know that the lion's share of public land trust revenue comes from state agencies. But where I was going with that mention, when it comes to direct negotiation of public land trust revenue, which I don't think the county tax revenue would fall into, but maybe it does. We'd have to do the analysis. But in terms of direct negotiation, I think OHA could explore whether the counties take in significant PLT revenue and engage in direct negotiation with them for that 20%. Mahalo.
Thank you.
Mahalo. We're going to do a few more, sticking with the 30-second theme as well. I have a couple of questions here. Okay. Candidate Alapa, you had spoke about having one agenda among all 9 members of the board. What's one thing that you would do to accomplish that?
Well, one of the first things we like to do in working with our trustees, number one is it's all about the love and support of each other and the goals that we have for our Hawaiian people. I'd like to see that as we work together, that we have and implement the common knowledge that at the end of the meeting that we have gotten closer to realizing what our goals are and helping our Hawaiian beneficiaries. Every time we walk into that boardroom, there is a goal to meet, and that's all about the Hawaiians. Hawaiians come first. Thank you.
Mahalo. Aloha, Trustee Akina. Good evening.
Good evening.
Your opponent raised some questions with regards to the dual hat that you wear with the Grassroots Institute and your kuleana to the Office of Hawaiian Affairs beneficiaries. What is your response to questions when asked about that dual kuleana?
Well, that's wonderful. First, I'm more than open to answering any questions my opponent has and welcome his call, and we'll chat about that. That's important. But as president of the Grassroots Institute, I have stood for a better Hawaii for everyone, including Native Hawaiians. And there are many Native Hawaiians who are working to build a better economy, a better government, a better society. And I think the important thing is that we build the resources for Native Hawaiians, and we also build the resources for everyone in the state of Hawaii, because in many ways we are all in the same canoe. To raise the water level of one boat, we need to raise the water level of all. Thank you.
Mahalo. And so to candidate Souza, you're relatively new to political office. I'm curious, and I think some folks have asked some questions, and just being curious about what you think would be the first thing. You've been very clear about some of the areas where you and your opponent differ. What would be the first thing for you, and how would you leverage your experience to take action if elected?
Restoring the voice to the organization, that the voice that OHA has for its people, restoring the confidence that the people have in OHA. You know, I'm going to say this straight up. Our people, talking about the Native Hawaiians and the beneficiaries, don't respect my opponent. And they don't respect him because he is not in support. He is not listening. He's not going out into the communities and listening to what their needs are. Like I said earlier, he works for an organization that, he's anti-union. He goes after different Hawaiian organizations, and it appalls me because he's a graduate of the Kamehameha schools, and so am I, and a few others on the panel as well. And when
Mahalo.
you stand by, okay, mahalo.
Mahalo nui. Sorry, these are quickie ones. And lastly, I think we have a question for candidate Lindsay. You have a background in land issues. Obviously, land is an important kuleana for OHA. What would you do differently if elected than what maybe has been done in the recent past with regards to land management?
Sorry, just to clarify, is this OHA's lands or just land management overall in Hawaii?
I think maybe OHA's land specifically, but if you want to broaden it, whatever you feel you'd like to speak towards. Mahalo.
Sure. So, overall with OHA's lands, I think we need to pursue the commercial development of Kaka'ako and our Iwilei property moving forward. We need to find a balance between commercial lands and conservation lands. Lots of conservation lands potentially becoming available, but those come at a cost. And overall, when you look throughout Hawaii, I firmly believe that the Native Hawaiian voice should be meaningfully represented in decision-making and management of all areas. I have experience with that in Papahanaumokuakea and look forward to seeing and supporting that happening elsewhere.
Mahalo. Mahalo. So I think we're a little over our time on this segment. Governor, did you want to close us out with anything?
No, if I did, it would. I'm so interested. I could keep this group here another 15, 20 minutes. Because there's so much. There's so much in the group as to what we can learn. I mean, we can talk about what happens with Kaka'ako. We can talk about the changing role. How did OHA become a state agency instead of a Hawaiian agency, and the rest of it. But it's been a great night, and I really appreciate the just sitting and being able to hear them talk. So I think, yeah, let's move on to the Kanikapila.
Okay, mahalo everyone, and thank you.
I
We're
see
trying
Kama
to
over there already.
we're trying to do new and innovative and different things with these Zoom meetings. So mahalo everyone for going through that, and you can kind of dry your brow and we'll go pauhana. Auntie Momi.
I'll hop in there, sister.
Oh, kalamai. Thanks, Kailan.
Mahalo nui to Becky, Governor Waihe'e, and Ken for your thoughtful questions. I thought you guys had great responses. We'd now like to give the candidates 90 seconds each for their closing remarks, beginning with Keoni Souza, followed by Kili Akina, who are the trustee-at-large candidates, then the Hawaii resident trustee candidates, that is Lanakila Manguel and Keola Lindsay, and to close will be the Molokai resident trustee candidates, Colette Machado and Luana Alapa. Keoni, please take it away.
Once again, mahalo to the Democratic Party, the Hawaiian Caucus members for putting on this event tonight. I look forward actually to the Pauhana session and sharing some talents this evening. Going back to, I'm here to serve our people. I will always remember the main goal of OHA and why OHA was started. And we cannot forget that. Whoever is elected trustee, we must always remember to have the best interests of our people in mind. And I'm going to close with this because I truly believe it. When Hawaiians thrive, Hawaii thrives. No Hawaiian left behind. And we need the support of the entire state to move forward. So mahalo, Holt Souza, aloha.
Mahalo nui loa, candidate Souza. On to candidate Kelia Kina.
Well, I want to say mahalo to all the members of the Hawaiian Affairs Caucus of the Democratic Party and to all the viewers tonight. Aloha and best wishes to my fellow candidates and to my opponent. It is really such an honor to be your trustee at large in OHA. I want to say that my record speaks for itself. I've worked hard to bring transparency and accountability to OHA. I'm committed to making sure that Hawaiians get housing and jobs, education and healthcare. And that's why I have been your watchdog in OHA on behalf of all the beneficiaries. If reelected, I will further my three-part plan to protect the OHA Trust through audits and through fiscal policy, to build the OHA Trust by developing properties like Kaka'ako Makai, to use the OHA Trust so that people have the real needs they need to have met, especially now during the COVID crisis. I say e hana kako, which means let's work together. Let's have a spirit of respect and aloha for one another. Let's recognize we are all kanaka maoli and that we are all committed to one great cause of building the conditions of the Native Hawaiian people so that we have a better future. If Hawaiians don't thrive, there are ripple effects that affect the entire community. And so let's work together to bring everyone together for a better Hawaii, for Hawaiians and all Hawaii. I've enjoyed being here so much tonight. Aloha.
Mahalo nui loa, Keli'i. Moving on to Hawaii Island, candidate Manguel.
Start off by saying big aloha and mahalo to everyone. Mahalo for hosting this. And mahalo to all of our candidates for coming up and sharing. It's an honor to be able to stand by and put my name into to continue to rise our lahui. I think it's essential that one thing that we need is lokahi. We need unity. We need to be able to stand together. And I think the best example OHA can do, or the best example for OHA, is to look to what your people did, what our people did to protect our mauna. For that is the same movement, the same type of energy that formed OHA in the beginning. It was sparking the heart of our lahui. It was seeing and feeding and supporting our people from our foundations as a people. I think looking to our goals in the future for many of us in the generations rising, our life mission is to ho'opono, to try and fix a lot of the situations that we were born into, to try to make and heal this earth so we have a future to be able to really actually plan forward. So institutional knowledge is great. We need that. That's what we have been living in, and that's also what has caused so much of our divide. It's an honor to have been elected, or it's an honor to have been had the winning vote for my island that I choose to stand to represent. And may we move forward together.
I'm so sorry. Kalamai. Moving on to candidate Lindsay.
Mahalo. Tonight when I was preparing, for this event, my memories took me back to, the days of my youth when, at the time, he was running to be our U.S. Senator. Senator Akaka was campaigning in Waimea. And I was reminded recently by my father just how much the old folks, in our family in Waimea loved him because he was humble. He built relationships. He had aloha. All of these values that just really resonated, with people. That was in line with, some of the old time values of the folks that I look up to, and, I just try to really, honor, my family's legacy and try to follow that, build relationships, treat other people with respect, even if we disagree, that's fine. But we always got to treat each other with, respect. And I kind of feel like I'm a person that engaged in politics because I want to help with people. And this political part of it's been kind of wild, a little more than I thought, it was going to be. But I think, we all know that come the morning of November 4th, we're all going to wake up, the sun's going to come up again. But we're all still going to be committed to our communities and helping our people in Hawaii, be a better place. So mahalo to everyone and aloha.
Mahalo nui loa, candidate Lindsay. I apologize. I'm going to depart slightly from the intended closing statement. The team that did the extemporaneous questions noticed that they did not give a question to candidate Machado. And in the interest of equity and ensuring that all candidates were treated fairly, I'd like to throw it back to Becky Soon for a 30-second Q&A with candidate Machado. Becky, please take it away.
Kalamai, candidate Machado, mahalo. If you just want to spend 30 seconds sharing with us what you think the distinctions are between you and your opponent. And then Kainoa, did you want her to go directly into her closing as well?
Yes, please. Yes.
Mahalo.
The distinctive difference is that I continue to live here on Molokai. I never left. I was born and raised here. I was raised by a pure Hawaiian woman and a Portuguese Hawaiian man. They worked very hard in the pineapple fields and they made the best for myself and my three brothers. So that's all I can say is if you're looking to look at a real person that lives here and knows the community, not just Molokai, but Lanai, I'm your candidate. So with that said, I'll do my closing comment. A vote for me is an acknowledgement of the Molokai Lanai communities that I represent, the majority of whom voted for me in the primary as someone born and raised on Molokai. I am a lifelong Democrat, and I humbly ask for your vote. Mahalo and aloha. Thank you.
Mahalo nui loa, candidate Machado, for your patience with us and your grace in that regard. And mahalo to you, candidate Alapa, as well. I know it was a little bit stepping out of the normal course of it, but I wanted to make sure we were all treated equally and with equity as we continued on. Candidate Alapa, the final closing statement is all yours. Mahalo.
I want to say that I'm in awe of our OHA candidates because of your love and commitment for Hawaiian people and wanting the best for them. My purpose in running for OHA, Molokai Island Trustee, is to basically work hard. We work hard in helping to grow the trust by improving our economic and the betterment of our Native Hawaiian beneficiaries. Through, of course, the most important is affordable housing. I'd like to see them all with a roof over their heads in the immediate future. Secondly, besides that is the education, the self-sustenance through agriculture, health and dental care, and of course, financial education. Very, very important part of our educating our Hawaiians so that they can be able to climb to the top of the economic ladder and be first there. One of the most important values my father taught me, my sisters, is to be of service to others. It's one of the greatest things we could ever do in our lifetime. Being of service to my Hawaiian community is one of the greatest things that I could do as trustee for the Office of Hawaiian Affairs in Molokai Island. Mahalo.
Mahalo nui loa. On to Jacob.
Mahalo nui, everybody. Mahalo nui to our candidates, and on behalf of the Hawaiian Affairs Caucus, we would like to thank you for being our guests this evening. And with just a few days before election ballots drop, we want to wish all of you the best of luck in the upcoming general election. And thank you for putting your names forward to serve our communities, but more importantly, to serve our lahui. So mahalo to each and every one of you. We are running a little bit behind schedule, so Kalamai and Auntie, we're gonna take a quick shift because we want to make sure we give time for our pohana that everybody has been looking forward to. So we have Brother Kama Hopkins on with us, and Kama, we will give it to you. Can you start us with a song?
I have traveled from place to place, some familiar and some strange, to hear the ancient chantings of our home. As I've listened to the stories, my eyes have seen the glory. So let us raise our voice in song to save our lives. All Hawaii stands together. It is now and forever. Raise your voices and hold your banners high. We shall stand as a nation to guide the destiny of our generation. Sing and praise the glory of our land. Within stone walls and cities of refuge, we learn the sacred ways. Upon white eagles valley floor, the ancient battles rage. From the barren slopes of Kahului to the shores of Hanapei, we shall claim our land, marking sands and valleys of
Hawaii, stand together. It is now and forever. Raise your banners, hold your banners high. We shall stand as a nation to guide the destiny of our generation, to sing and praise the glory of our land.
From the fiery pits to Tupele, I hear my mother's call. Up to Tukane and Mauna Kea, love to all. To stand as one beneath the sun. Blessings from Haleakala, Lord, our sweet Kaula, and Waihale'ale, where the greatest waters fall. Hawaii stands together. It is now and forever. Raise your voices and hold your banners high. We shall stand as a nation, guide the destiny of our generation, to sing and praise the glories of our land. Kako, Kupahame, Kalokadie, Kupahame, Havivole. Onipakako, Alana Kilana Kineo, Eolana Kineo.
Paipaili makako, mahalo nui kama for that mele. Takes me back to one of my favorite bars called Shinshote. So
Absolutely.
So, we do have
Aloha.
about 2 minutes left, and we want to make sure that we share the awesome talents of our OHA trustees. So we're gonna get right in it. We did allocate 2 minutes, but if you're able to go a little less, please do so. We have until 8 o'clock, but we're gonna go right into it, and we'll start with Trustee Kelly Akina. Show us your talent, Trustee.
Mahalo. I have a simple little ho'okupu. My kumuhulu taught me when I was a young boy that whatever challenges we face in life, we can dig deep into our cultural roots to find the answer. E mano no la ea, e mano no la ea, e o ea, e o e. Manono was the wife of a warrior chief who went to battle with him because she loved him so much. Kau kau pe ope kaulu halala ea, a e o e a e o e. He fell in battle. She picked up his spear. She decided she would not be a victim, but would fight till the end. Ule mai ho e la, mo e kaua, a e o e, a e o e. Manono's body fell in the battle, but her spirit lives on. So does her belief that we are never victims. We must imua alana kila, fight until the end for ourselves, for our ohana, and for our lahui. This is the strength we draw from the ancient past as we move forward in this time, COVID, economic challenge. I have been so honored to serve as your trustee at large. I would be honored to continue doing so. Mahalo and aloha.
Mahalo, Trustee. Mahalo for that. Paipai lima. Next, we have Lanakila. Lanakila, floor is yours, brother.
Eno Kamele was honored to learn this hula by the late Kahuna Nui John Keonalei, the many ceremonies of Pukohola, the temple of state, through the birth of the kingdom of Hawaii. But this really reminds us that this is our home and that we must love this place like a lei draped upon our umauma, upon our chest. From the mountains to the sea and everything in between, that all that was passed on from our kupuna. Eno kamele o Hawaii ai na aloha. Let's rise together. Imua i kala hui Hawaii. Eola. Mahalo kapo.
Hola, hola. Mahalo nui Lanakila. Moving on to Brother Keone Souza.
Right on, Jacob. I'm for the lahui, for Kiki or Kupuna. Talking about our kupuna, I'm gonna go back to my Hawaiian roots, which is the island of Molokai. So this goes out to Trustee Machado and Luana Alapa over there, running for Molokai and Lanai Island Trustee. Song it's Nani Molokai. Mahalo. Uhanani Molokai Nuia Hina Kaeke no Haona Ailana Hauhanani Molokai Nuia Hina Kaeke no ia Haona Ailana Uluvehi Behia Olani Kaula Kaulu Kui Kui He Kaula Nane Hevai Au Au Ha Houla Kaula Puluki Kailio Amalini Ahoale alei kaehu ke kai hai ke ku kila kilo hai na iama ana apana le tu kae ke ao amolo kai Haina, ia mai, ana kapuana. Sulei kui kui, kae ke o amaru kai.
Mahalo.
Mahalo nui. Wow, I think the Hawaiian Affairs Caucus has set a new standard for candidate forums. Maybe we should have the two mayor candidates in Honolulu share with us some talent. So
I like where you're going with this.
we're gonna move that forward and propose that to Hawaii News Now and the rest of the media. Mahalo nui. Wow, I'm in awe. Moving on. Next we have Keola Lindsay, who's with us on Hawaii Island. Keola.
Yeah, so I read in the fine print, if we sang along with Kama, we got out of this, right? No, so I mean, I'm like sweating already. So I guess the category, what I'm going to share is more mo'olelo for folks, and hopefully it's an inspiring one. So in 2016, I had the honor of being part of a group that went down to Aotearoa to retrieve the mahiole and ahu'ula of Kalaniʻopu'u. And as a part of that trip, we got to spend some time with the curator at Te Papo Tongareva Museum, who had spent a significant amount of time with the ahu'ula. And she herself was recognized as a living treasure, a Maori living treasure for her weaving skills. And I'll always remember that she shared with us that if she were ever to show someone an example of just the highest level of excellence in native craftsmanship, it would be the ahu'ula. And that for the hours and hours she had spent, looking at it and studying it, herself as an expert weaver, they could not figure out how the ahu'ula had been made, the intricate work and stuff like that. So I thought that was a pretty high compliment from an expert from another culture. But it made me think of like the excellence that our kupuna strive for. Yeah, even in the most challenging times, everything about their life was excellence. No matter what was going on, and maybe the cape was made over generations, excellence and producing at the highest level was always the goal. And I think for us, with the challenges that we exist with right now, that lesson from our kupuna can still exist. Yeah, that we're gonna come out of this greater than we've ever been, and we'll always strive as a people and as a community to be excellent. Mahalo.
Mahalo nui, and that really reminds me of that saying, "Hu ikeaka o na kupuna." Let us stand in the shadows of our kupuna, and I think all of you tonight have done that with your answers as well as with your talent. So, mahalo nui. Moving on, we will be going to the beautiful island of Molokai with our two beautiful Molokai candidates. We'll first start with Luana Alapa. Luana, floor is yours.
Oh my goodness, where is the karaoke? Not gonna happen today, or hula, as much as I love that. But I think if anything, I was asking my cousins and helping me to find some kind of verbiage, meaningful that I like to share with you folks. And she said, Luana, this is perfect. So I said, send it over to me, and I read it. Said this is exactly what I needed to express. So this is a quote from our Queen Lili'u Kalani, and I believe it's perfect for the moment. And mine will take all more than 10 seconds, and I'm done. Here we go. I could not turn back the time for political change, but there still is time to save our heritage. You must remember, never cease to act because you fear you may fail. Mahalo.
Mahalo. Mahalo.
Thanks.
Okay, and our last performer for the night is going to be
Well, I have to clarify that, Jacob. There is no performance on my part.
I apologize.
I asked Keone Souza if he would kako'o me, since he has ties with the Iaia Ohana here on Molokai, to do Molokai Nui Ahina. But if you want me to pass in an abundance to save time because we're over time, I'm okay with it because Keone did dedicate a song to Molokai to Luana, and I'm okay with that.
No, so we have time. So floor is yours, Keone.
Okay, yeah, everybody sing along. So, song entitled Molokai Nui Ahina.
Kui Luna from my island. Molokai Ahina. Nai ka vehi vehi. E ho'i no fau e pi. E kamakani e. He pau mai me ke aia he au hea. Ku'ua kalau. Ina hoi wa o pi ilani. Iki ku kila kila ka o lua. O pui kukui ai ai kalani hua. E lelu lona paine.
Everybody.
Oi ke noa ke la me ku kohanau. Ke poho ke le kapi a kuhi. Molokai nui ahina. Aina le ka vehi vehi. E ho'i no fau e pi. E kamakani e. Pau mai me ke ahia he au hea. Ku'ua kalau. E kamakani e. Pau mai me ke ahia he au hea. Ku'ua kalau.
And I'm right there, Colette.
Yeah, my kai. I just have to cool. I just
never
have to
rehearsed
cool
this one,
Ilona.
guys. So.
Yeah. I just have to cool Ilona.
Like I said, we should be calling on every candidate running for office to do this. So we'll try to make that happen. But before we end the night and pass it back over to our Hawaiian Affairs Caucus Chair Kawamoto, on behalf of myself and Sister Kainoa, we just wanted to say mahalo nui to each and every one of you, to the candidates for your willingness to serve our communities, and to all of the folks behind the scenes. Chair Kawamoto, past Chair Han, we have Becky, we have Ken, we have Benton, We have governor and a whole slew of people who worked very hard to make this happen. Ballots do drop next week, and please, if you folks are watching at home, please participate. This is our chance to elect leaders who will be moving our communities forward. So mahalo nui for all that you do. And Kainoa, you have anything else before we pass it back over to our chair?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I would just similarly, in the same vein, like to mahalo everyone for the authentic way in which they approached all of these questions, and just the civility that we saw throughout the course of this discourse. So very honored, so very proud to have been a part of this. And I'm just gonna kick it right over back to Auntie Juanita. Aloha, mahalo nui.
Mahalo, mahalo, mahalo nui kako. What a beautiful evening. We are filled with ike and energy, and we are so fortunate that all of you came, and what great candidates we have from OHA. So they are working so hard to win your votes out there, and please vote. Please, please vote. It's so very important. So if you have any questions for our candidates, contact them at the emails shown on this slide. We're looking for the slide, but there you can contact them on the slide. And we want to ask for volunteers to help them with their campaigns. Please go out there, pick up a sign, knock on a door with a mask on to be COVID safe, and share with your ohana, and get on Zoom and tell others how important it is to vote for our OHA candidates. So additionally, if you need, again, any information about the history and mission of the Office of Hawaiian Affairs and of the Hawaiian Affairs Caucus, go to hawaiianaffairs.org. That's our website, hawaiianaffairs.org, and there you will find informational pamphlets that'll explain what we do and what OHA does. So again, lastly, mahalo to the Olelo staff, especially Jonathan Wong, pai. Woo! Mahalo, Jonathan. Wonderful job. And please visit the Hawaiian Affairs Caucus website at hawaiianaffairs.org and tell your friends about this amazing first of a kind program with all our wonderful OHA candidates. Ahui ho and malama pono. Bye. Bye.
Good job, everyone.
Hey, mahalo, guys.